I played the Elden Ring DLC very wrong, and I had a ton of fun with it. So when the Elden Ring DLC released earlier this year, I didn't really jump into it, but I did hear all the discourse surrounding it about how hard it is and how much people were complaining about it and they wanted it to be easier and all the stuff that I've been hearing from Dark Souls from the very beginning, but the opposite. People were saying that, like earlier Dark Souls games, people were saying that it was like too easy at some points. Obviously, casual players have always said that Dark Souls is too hard, and people that get into the game and learn the mechanics and stuff say it's too easy. In Dark Souls 3, that's when I really heard people saying how easy it was. People were complaining people were complaining how easy Dark Souls 3 was, and I thought that was a silly argument because the base game in and of itself for most people is going to be incredibly difficult. I personally didn't have any issues with Dark Souls 3. I was able to kind of cruise through the game at my own pace and didn't have to grind or anything. It was just fine. Regardless, my counter argument to people that say it's too easy is just do self-imposed challenges where maybe you only have this many Estus or you're not allowed to heal or whatever. There's so many different challenge runs you can do in these Souls games. Regardless, going back to Elden Ring DLC, where everybody was saying how incredibly difficult it was too difficult. Then you got people saying if you used summons, then you didn't actually beat the game properly, and all sorts of this, that, and the other. After hearing all that discourse, it made me want to jump in and try the DLC, but I just never did during release. But a couple months ago, I finally played the Elden Ring DLC, except I did not play it correctly. I played Elden Ring again before I got to the DLC. I started a new character, except this time I played it with my friends. We did the seamless co-op mod, and my God, was that an incredibly fun experience. I will not deny it breaks the game having multiple characters because it makes the AI freak out, and also you can just gangbang people, but it is still so much fun. The most we had, I think we had 5 players. I think there's 5 of us max that was playing. Oh, maybe 6. Maybe we had 6 at one point. Regardless, it was so much fun going through the game co-op with friends. Don't get me wrong, Elden Ring, by playing by yourself, is still an incredible experience. I think all Souls games are. But playing through it with my friends was so much more fun. It was kind of like, there were times where I felt like we were playing an MMO doing boss raids together. That was a ton of fun. How the co-op mod works is there's a player that opens up his world and then everybody's able to join it. It's like having separate instances of the game. Everybody can collect all the same items together, but when you kill enemies, sometimes items spawn for others and not for other players. So there is still a little bit of that RNG that just comes with base Elden Ring, but you don't have to worry about having to share runes or anything like that because it's all like its own instance. So everybody gets boss items, everybody gets weapons that are in the world. So you don't have to worry about that. Everything is kind of shared. What you can do though is you can drop items amongst players. So if I picked up a dex weapon, even though I was doing strength, I would drop my dex weapon for somebody that was doing a dex build because it made sense for them to use it and not me because I would never do dex. The game itself, playing through co-op, is very buggy. Incredibly buggy. I'll just go through some of the bugs that we had. We would have people would disconnect, people would get stuck on loading screens, people wouldn't load in whenever we would invade, doing some of those co-op invade missions. When we were doing Everjails, sometimes people wouldn't load in, or they would, and they couldn't see the boss. Lots of times we'd enter a boss fight, and half of us could see the boss, the other half couldn't. But you could still get hurt by the boss, but you couldn't do any damage to the boss. There were times where somebody would die during a boss fight, and then the boss fight would get reset because we would all fail. As we spawned in, some of us would, this happened 2 separate instances, but one time I spawned in and I was not watching my character, although I could still move my character around. My camera was stuck on the buddy's character, so I was watching his character from his perspective, so he had to get behind me and walk so I could see myself and walk and get killed by another enemy to reset it. Lots of times we would all have to make sure that we rested at the same time whenever we were at a site of grace. because it resets the game and you just need to make sure everybody's on the same instance. So it's just super buggy, but those bugs did not stop us from playing and having a ton of fun doing it. It just adds another element and dynamic and strategy to the game. The last bug that really was grinding our gears that we couldn't figure out until after several different tries of doing it, but we were trying to beat the final boss in the base game, and the floor wouldn't spawn in for some of us, so we would literally walk forward and then fall through it and then die. But after we did that, we were then able to, after we would respawn, the floor would load in. So it's just a bunch of silly, weird bugs like that. But regardless, the bugs did not stop us from having fun. It's more of a minor inconvenience for the amount of fun that you get playing through with your friends. And once again, it breaks the game. It really does. Not only does it add a ton of bugs, but the game becomes ridiculously easy when you've got 4 people wailing on bosses and whatnot. Because once again, the AI struggles with figuring out who they should attack. The only bosses we really ever had trouble with were bosses that had really big AoE attacks or that were really big. Like dragons were giving us a hard time. Either way though, it was still a ton of fun. It was a ton of fun playing through with my friends that knew a lot more about the game than I did. We tried to do as much as we could. We tried to fight all the main bosses and lots of side bosses. I don't think we did every single dungeon, but we did the good majority of them. We got tons of different weapons. We were able to experiment with tons of different weapons, which is one of my favorite parts about the game. I did a strength faith build, so I was messing with a lot of spells and lots of different weapons that used faith. But it was really fun that we had a bunch of different combinations and builds that all of us were doing. We had strength, faith. We had a tank build where one of my friends he did a strength build, but he was using shields. We had a mage who was strictly magic and became like a glass cannon where they would deal tons of damage, but if you poked them once, they were dead. So I don't know, it's just fun. It was a fun other element to the dynamic of Elden Ring that I really, really liked. And I hope going forward that there's a way for me and my friends to continue to participate in something like that, because it was a lot of fun. Going into the DLC, I knew it was very difficult, but one of my friends had already completed it by himself, so there was 4 of us playing through it then. And once again, the bugs still persisted, and honestly, we still had a hard time playing through the DLC as far as like the difficulty of the bosses. Some of those bosses, their combos are insane, and you don't really have any opportunities to attack. Like the one boss that we were stuck on for a while was there was 2 dragons that were fighting each other. That was really difficult for some reason. There was a few other bosses we had a lot of problems with, but like Mesmer, he wasn't bad. The lion wasn't bad. The hippo wasn't bad. The last boss, fighting Radon, he gave us a lot of trouble too. He had 2 phases. But it was fun. Like the DLC's really good, dude. The areas are cool. The new weapons you get are cool. Spells and Ashes of War are really good. The game gives you tons of different items to craft and to use in battles and fights, and you've got your summons still, which if somebody says that you haven't beat the game if you use summons, that's silly. It's in the game, literally use it. If anything, that somebody that used summons has more credibility than the way I did it, where I just beat it with my friends. And I probably will someday go back and play through the Elden Ring DLC by myself and play it as the devs intended. But once again, like playing through the co-op mod was so much fun. And if you've got some buddies and a copy of Elden Ring on Steam, you should download the mod, it's free, and play through that co-op mod because it was a ton of fun. It's fun going through dungeons and fighting bosses with the homies. It's such a unique experience that we haven't really gotten in Souls games before. I mean, you can summon people for specific fights, but nothing like this. You are literally in the same world playing together in the same instance of the game. And it's just fun. It's a fun, goofy experience. I think that the Elden Ring DLC is incredible. It is very difficult. I will say, yes, it is difficult, even with 4 or 5 of us playing at one time. We were struggling. The bosses do have more health. I need to say that. I think they have whatever number of players you have, it's times that much health. We had 4 to 5 of us, so it was times that much on their health and whatnot, but it was still fun. Like, you should give it a go. Once again, I'll probably eventually go back and play through the Elden Ring DLC by myself, but I had a ton of fun playing through this with the boys, and I'm very glad that I played Elden Ring wrong. But that's it. Those are my thoughts. Just my initial thoughts on the DLC. I mean, there's tons of videos of people talking about the DLC and their thoughts. I liked it. I need to go through and play it by myself too, and experience it by myself, because it makes the difficulty that much more harder when the boss is always locked onto you and not 3 other people. But yeah, it was fun. I highly recommend playing the co-op mod together with some friends if you've got the means to do it. You have to do it on the PC. I don't think there's any way to do it on Xbox or PlayStation. But regardless, it was a ton of fun. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are on the seamless co-op mod if you've played it. Let me know what your thoughts are on the DLC of Elden Ring. Were you able to beat it by yourself? If not, let me know why. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and as always, keep it rad.